Welcome to TechCrunch Now. I'm Evelyn Rusli. For those of you who've just stumbled on this is a show where we break down the top headlines in tech of the day with founders, CEOs, investors, and also, of course, the TechCrunch staff. So today, our guests are Evan Solomon, he's the VP of Marketing for Justin TV, and Michael Seibel, he's the CEO of Justin TV. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Now, a little known fact, and for full disclosure, Michael Seibel and I actually went to the same high school back in the day, and we were part of some awesome, if not incredibly nerdy debate clubs. But Evan and I did not go to the same high school, but I'm sure he would have been a great addition to our Model UN club as well. So to get to the headlines here, let's talk about Foursquare. Dennis Crowley's geolocation service picked up $20 million in Series B funding led by Andreessen Horowitz. What do you guys think? Are they really a company that's worth roughly $100 million?
Well, I mean, I think they led a very competitive process. As I've been reading about it, it took multiple months, talked to a lot of suitors, and so it seems like they were able to get the price that the market could bear. I'm pretty impressed with their ability to raise that round. I think what's even more interesting is their product and where it can go. One of the things that we like about Justin.tv is when it can leave the home and it can go mobile, and when you can share live video content with your friends when you're out in the real world. And
hold on a second, Michael. It sounds like you're trying to strike up a partnership with Justin TV and Foursquare.
I just think one of the really cool things about Foursquare is that you can create content and share content when you're outside of the house. And I think that's the most interesting part of social media, is when interesting things happen, how can you share them with the world? So no, I think that'd be great to work with Foursquare.
You know, Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures, he said that it was a very deliberate process. They took their time. Do you think they did the right thing? Would you have done the same thing in Crowley's position, Evan?
Well, I mean, I know he kind of feels, and he said publicly, that he feels a little burned by the Google dodgeball deal. So it's not totally surprising that he would be averse to that again. But I did think Fred's post was very interesting. He was really open about the conversations they had with acquirers and investors, and you know, they picked a group of people they wanted to work with, and they took their time talking to both the investors and the acquirers. And that's not usually the level of openness you see about that kind of process. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, so we talked to Dennis Crowley about 2 weeks ago or so, and we asked him, who do you think are your top competitors? And he said, you know, it wasn't Gowalla, it wasn't Looped. He said, actually, it's Facebook and Twitter, and we have that clip here right now.
Well, it's Twitter and Facebook. You know, these are, like, we aspire to build things that are as amazing as the platforms that they've created, and I think we've got a good shot of getting there. I'm sure Facebook's going to do something with geolocation. Like, Twitter's already doing stuff with geolocation, but you know, we have a specific action. Like, we're all about check-ins. We're all about discovery of places. We're all about introducing people to new experiences, and you know, and we're about rewarding people for doing those things. And that's something, you know, those are 4 things that do not exist in those other products, and I think that's a good space for us to play in.
So if Facebook and Twitter are their main rivals, do you think that those services can come in and essentially make Foursquare obsolete in a year or so if they try to compete in a real direct manner?
I think that's very challenging. I think we already saw Yelp try to incorporate geolocation, and I know from our personal experience, you know, Yahoo tried to build a live product to compete directly with Justin.tv, and that didn't go very well. I think the real challenge is, are they going to be incorporating geolocation, or are they going to be cloning Foursquare? I think if they're able to incorporate geolocation as part of their primary product, there's a compelling argument to be made. But if they're just looking to kind of create a clone, you know, the guys who did it first are going to be the best at doing it.
Yeah, and I know we were joking around before about a partnership between Justin TV and Foursquare, but what do you think is the promise of geolocation for your service?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty simple phenomenon. Once people can effectively share live video from around the real world, it'd be nice to know where they are. And you know, the great thing about Foursquare kind of puts kind of a location and kind of an interest level map across what you're doing. So it'd be very compelling to not only be able to know your friends are somewhere, but to also know what they're doing, what's going on, if is that place fun, or are they just trying to bring you to the place so that, you know, there are now 3 people instead of 1. So I think that there's just always a thirst for information, and knowing where my friend is just the beginning. And I think you know, the next step is is pretty compelling too.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. Now, I'm really glad we have you guys here today because one of the top headlines today is what Hulu is trying to do. So they're going to create a premium service about $9.99 a month, and you can get access to full seasons, past seasons from shows on ABC, NBC, Fox, etc. And I think it's still going to deliver ads, of course, but do you think that that's a model that's going to work and that could be replicated for other businesses as well?
I mean, I think Hulu is in a lot of ways a pretty tough spot. You know, they're backed by some of these big media companies, Fox and ABC and NBC, I think, and maybe some others.
How do you use Hulu?
I am not a big Hulu watcher, to be honest.
Do you have to say that because you're on Justin TV?
Maybe, but I'm actually not. No, I mean, I don't watch a ton of long-form content on my computer. And I have a TV in my apartment, so I tend to use that. And I'm more of a kind of standard, I guess, cable consumer. I still have a DVR. So I tend to use that for that stuff. But I mean, I think in a lot of ways the Hulu product is interesting, and they've talked about it so much that it was really hyped up both from the company point of view and from the users kind of wondering what they were going to do. And I think that made it tough to really meet or even exceed expectations because it had been talked about for so long in advance that they came out with something that is fairly straightforward. It's charging a monthly fee to access content that's not really that interesting. It might be a great product, but I think they had talked about it for so long and it had been talked up in the press for so long that it was going to be tough for users to really be excited about anything they came out with at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, you look in this arena all the time. Even though Hulu is different than Justin TV, I mean, I'm sure you're looking at different ways to monetize your product and looking at what other rivals are doing who are in the video space, right?
Sure.
So do you think that they're actually going to gain traction with this type of thing, that people are going to pay $9.99 a month?
So, I mean, I think it's very encouraging that a company like Hulu is around, a company that has access to premium content. It just shows that content owners are starting to think, how can we bring our content to the other two screens in people's lives, their phones and their computers. So I think that's very encouraging. I think that the product certainly can get traction among a web audience, although I think that there's some limiting factors. The primary limiting factor, I think, is expectations. These companies make billions of dollars with their television properties, and the market for that type of content is massive on television. And online, it's still a very new market. And so I hope the expectations aren't set too high so that any level of success is not seen as good enough.
Now, looking forward, right, there's a great debate right now as to what our media experience will be like in the next few years. And Google TV is trying to go one direction. And of course, there's just so many different avenues, whether you're looking on your iPad or the web, the natural web, or the TV. So what do you think that's going to be like as someone who has to look at that every day and trying to imagine where this is going to go?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that all of the viewing experiences are open. I think it's really exciting that people are starting to bring the internet to their televisions. I've been hooking up a computer to my television for the past couple of months, and it's been a great experience. And I know that's not mainstream, and I wonder, what could my parents do if that was more streamlined? I think in the end of the day, the internet's just going to, really spread across all of the viewing mediums, and creativity is going to be abound. I don't really see any platform today that's going to be a dominant platform. I think this is extremely early. And so it's very encouraging. The companies that are going to dominate this space probably haven't even been founded yet.
Speaking of dominant platforms, a lot of people say that the iPhone is now the dominant mobile device, generally in terms of what it can offer. And there's been a lot of talk lately as to whether or not the Verizon iPhone marriage is going to debut next year. Bloomberg had a report on that this week. Some people say yes, some people say no, and these rumors come up again and again, right? What do you guys think? And do you guys have iPhones?
I do. I think we both got the new iPhone 4 last week.
How do you like your AT&T network?
I'm actually fine with it. I mean,
even in San Francisco, huh?
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of my usage actually isn't making phone calls, which is, I don't know, in some ways weird, I guess, but probably not that weird for iPhone users. But yeah, honestly, I actually don't think it's certainly not nearly as bad as it's kind of made out to be. And I also don't think that it's really like the primary effect. I spend so much time using apps on Wi-Fi and things like that it's really mitigated. But yeah, I mean, going to your point about Verizon, I'm at this point really numb to those rumors. I think they've come up, every 6 months for the last 3 years, and they just keep, falling through. So it sort of seems hard, at least for me, to get really excited about it. Even it's not something I really want that much, but if I did, it just seems like it's disappointed so many times. although this Bloomberg report looks kind of more substantial than others.
It's such a funny debate because eventually we know it's going to be on Verizon. It's going to be in a year. It's going to be a year and a half. I mean, one day it will probably be on Verizon. But what impact do you think that's going to have on the market? Because I know several people, and including myself, when it goes on Verizon, I plan on switching.
Interesting. I mean, I think Apple is smart, and I think that they picked AT&T. I mean, I was reading a little bit today that being able to choose AT&T allowed them to use networks not only in the United States but globally. And I know I was just on vacation in Europe and my iPhone worked great. And so it seems like that was a very, very strategic move. And it seems like taking a step away from that would have to be done very deliberately. Do I think that it's going to be a very compelling buy when it's on other networks? Certainly. I think that Apple, though, also has to be concerned about Android because if I have an expensive Android device that I've purchased and I'm using for the next couple of years, am I actually going to buy another device? I think that's challenging. So the longer that there are compelling Android devices made available on Verizon and Sprint, I think the harder it is for iPhone to be able to capture that market.
How do you think the viewing experience will be different on these different platforms, specifically for your service?
Well, it's so interesting, right? The design conventions for the two devices are like so different. And as we've been building applications for Android, I've had to start testing on Android devices and start demoing. And it's a whole new world. And I can't say whether it's better. I mean, I have a personal opinion that it's worse, but I believe that Android is significantly more open and significantly more malleable. And so it's kind of like we're looking at a Windows PC in 1988. I mean, it's not that great, but it has a long shelf life. It's got a lot of room to improve.
Yeah, it doesn't have also the screen that the iPhone 4 has.
The two cameras are amazing. The forward-facing camera, I was a little bit disappointed. The quality in that camera is absolutely abysmal, especially compared to the other camera on the back, which is now like 5 times better. But in the end of the day, I mean, you just see the speed of Android devices being released. I mean, Apple can't win a war of releasing the best piece of hardware forever. I mean, because we're getting new Android phones every month.
Yeah.
Really, it's that hardware-software combination that they're going to try to bet on in the long term as being the best.
And also the battery combination, because the Android devices, as powerful as they are, those batteries, I mean, if you can only use it for an hour, what's the point?
That's true.
Yeah.
That is pretty bad.
I think one of the interesting things about iPhone versus Android is a lot of the things that get sometimes positioned negatively, like iPhone being a closed system and only having the one hardware option, actually makes it much, much easier to make really great applications for it. And you see that using Android and iPhone apps that are from the same company. The iPhone one just almost always looks way more polished and fits better. If you've used an iPhone, you usually know how to use a well-made iPhone app because it works in the same way as a lot of other ones. With Android, there's so many platforms and so much less kind of structure that it's harder to make that transition work well.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. We look forward to what you bring out on either platform. So we'll have you back very soon. That about does it for TechCrunch Now. My guests have been Michael Seibel, CEO of Justin TV, and Evan Solomon, who's the VP of Marketing. Thanks a lot, and until next time on TechCrunch Now.